I want to turn briefly to the last 4 days of the Platinum Jubilee, Sharon, because aside from Boris Johnson being booed, which may well have been a tipping point for many MPs to press the button on him today with this no confidence, it was also interesting to me that the Sussexes got booed. Harry and Meghan, what did you make of that?
Well, it wasn't a total boo.
Wasn't as big as Boris?
No, nowhere near.
But very unusual for a member of the royal family to get any booing at that kind of event.
Yes,
and they did.
But it wasn't anywhere near as bad as Boris. You could still hear the cheers above the boos, put it that way.
I mean, should we read much into it? I just got the feeling they basically discovered on this particular trip that they've gone from A-list royals to C-list.
What do you mean by that?
And that's how the royal family are now going to treat them. They won't be on the balcony, they won't be at the top events, and they can come and go if they want, but they're no longer going to be working A-list important royals.
No. Come on now, dog.
No, they have lost their importance. They don't mean anything. The country wasn't that overjoyed. I didn't hear many people go, this is amazing.
I don't think the country really cares very much.
They didn't. And the thing that I must say is the country didn't react one way or the other. It was, oh, they're here, okay. But...
Okay, I'm listening. You have my attention.
The way they kind of came in and went was a huge signal that I don't think we'll see them here much at all.
And what made me laugh, Isabel, was they arrived on a massive private jet from California, these two eco-warriors.
Whose was it,
constantly preaching. Well, it'll be... I mean,
it'll come out.
They've used Elton's a lot, they've used the Clooneys a lot, who knows, somebody, right? But it's the utter hypocrisy, once again, preaching about carbon footprint, always using private jets.
Same every time, same.
Yeah.
Here we go again.
And funny enough, the common link between all the people who got booed was hypocrisy. The British public will forgive a lot of things, but they won't forgive brazen hypocrisy.
Yeah, right.
To be fair on them, they did actually keep a relatively low profile, didn't they?
And,
you know, you said they discovered their C list. I mean, they asked to be taken off the list. You know, they wanted to be out of the working circulation. So I think it could have gone worse. You know, I don't think they overshadowed it.
No, no question.
Of course,
they didn't.
People took pictures of them, but they did behave quite well.
Okay.
There was no impact. It made no impact.
I just want to play a clip, first of all, of this is the Queen on the closing moments of the Platinum Jubilee on Sunday, because we weren't sure if she'd even make it. She was there at the start. I was by the palace when she came out on the Thursday. It was an amazing moment. And then she just sort of vanished from sight. And we thought that maybe we wouldn't see her again. And then you suddenly saw the flag moving on the palace roof and you realised, fantastic. And then you thought, go on, out you come.
That doesn't make sense.
And out came the star of the show, the star of any show she's ever at. And she came out, and I just thought, if we can listen to a bit of the sound here, I just thought this was so moving.
It gives you goosebumps.
It really does.
You don't like it.
Boring. That was a scene, and then, of course, the crowd had burst into God Save the Queen, which was incredibly evocative and emotional, I felt. Fact. Isabel, I mean, it's hard to overstate the importance of this Queen to this country or the impact that we're going to have when she's no longer here.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm not a massive monarchist, but I found the whole thing weirdly moving. And it is, because it sort of feels like it's a bit of a goodbye. I know that sounds a little bit mawkish.
Well, it's the last Jubilee that we'd better have for her.
In reality, she is not well. We know that.
Yeah.
And, you know, when the palace says she's experiencing some discomfort, we know that really means she's in a very great deal of pain.
Are you sure about that?
And I think when she does sadly pass, there is going to be a huge amount of national soul searching.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, she has held everything together.
Yes.
Real concerns about the future of the Union and the Commonwealth.
I totally agree. Grace, I know you're not a massive monarchist. In fact, you spent most of the weekend, according to your Instagram feed, at a wild festival where you were painting your fingernails fluorescent green.
What do you mean by that?
You're not a fan, Piers.
Which I thought was a tribute to what the Queen wore, actually, on the Sunday night.
Yes, I was
clearly I
informed ahead of
misjudged
time
you.
and coordinated.
But even as somebody who's not that into the monarchy, can you appreciate what this woman has done for the country?
I have basically no opinions about them as people. I don't really follow, you know, the ins and outs of the monarchy. I don't think I should have to follow what goes on within this family, this dynasty that kind of rules our country from behind the scenes.
What?
What I do think, though, is that when the Queen does sadly die, we will enter into a national conversation about whether or not this is an institution that we should have as part of our, you know, constitution, as part of the way that our country works. It is very strange that we have a family whose, you know, marriages, weddings, births, dramas, we're all constantly invested in understanding as though they're like kind of Kardashians or something.
Right.
That they're in charge of our politics, of our government. Ultimately, this is our head of state. I think that when the Queen, who everyone, you know, loves and who's been in charge for a very long time, does go, and we have this array of pretty uninspiring potential successors, people are going to start thinking, is this what we really want?
Right. You are missing, in my view, the rising superstar of the royal family, and it's this little guy.
He is.
Louis.
He's amazing.
Whose facial expressions over the 4 days got increasingly hilarious. And who clearly began to seize his moment. And in fact, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge issued a statement tonight on Twitter thanking everybody and saying that we all had a fantastic time, especially Louis.
That doesn't make sense.
Don't you think, though, that it gave people confidence that this is the family that will be here after the Queen is no longer here?
And by the way, very deliberately, that last scene on the last night, and everyone was singing God Save the Queen, but she had chosen for that.
Are you sure about that?
Sort of iconic moment of the end
That
of the
last
Jubilee.
picture.
That this was the family this is now the streamlined
That's the way it's gonna
royals.
be.
These are the two next monarchs, potentially 3 next monarchs, and that's the way it will
But
be.
Charles has said for a long time that he's going to cut down the people who are actually on payroll and that represent the family. It's going to be cold. And the thing is, I think that the royal family brings so much to this country.
Fact.
I mean, you look at all the people from all over
The tourists.
the world.
I mean, I think
the tourism,
they don't actually cost us anything.
the
The
merchandise
great myth
that
is
was
they cost us
sold.
money.
I think if we were going to make a kind of coherent economic argument as to how we construct our head of state, we could probably make a better one for saying, I don't know, have a presidential system or have
What, and
some
get our
sort
own
of...
version of Joe Biden?
Nice.
Well, I mean, no, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be the same as that. You would
I'm
have
just putting it out
head
there.
of
I think
state.
I think I'd rather have
he
the
would
Queen.
just be responsible for kind
I
of.
think I'd rather have the Queen.
Fact. Lovely to see Meghan Kelly back with us, of course, from the United States. The freedom-loving lady. Well, she spent some time in France, and that was a bit of fun. Our full chat is up at skynews.com.au, but the highlights on the telly right now. How do we not talk about Harry and Meghan?
Okay, I'm listening. You have my attention.
They don't want to work. It's the same reason they left the royal family. They only wanted to wear the crown jewels. They didn't actually want to toil away at the ribbon cutting ceremonies. And the same problem plagued them and their new employers once they got here stateside.
Are you sure about that?
The fact that she couldn't even make 12 episodes without complaining is absolutely pathetic, right? 12 episodes, I do that in 2 weeks. And what is she complaining about? And the problem is once you have an actual job as opposed to a stupid lifestyle website that nobody looks at, or I don't even know what Harry's ever done, it actually requires some effort, some elbow grease. You know, you have to prepare. And the biggest offense I heard about in the revelations about this podcast that failed was the fact that she committed a fraud.
What?
There are some pieces you put out where you must use a producer to do some of, forgive me, the less important interviews. That's just the way these big pieces go. Not in a podcast that has 2 interviews when you only have to do 12. I'm talking about an in-depth, several long-hour documentary. You might have a producer do a piece or two, an interview or two. You would never misrepresent that you did it. You would never cut your own questions into the interview and try to pawn it off on your audience like it was yours. That's grossly unethical. And if she did that with Spotify's help, Spotify has some answering to do because that's a fraud on your audience. But that's how lazy she is. And the reason she didn't want to do it herself is because A, she's lazy, right? Number one.
I said, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait, first of all, you're not going to speed past that like you didn't just say what you just said.
But B, she didn't want to talk to the people who weren't important. She only wanted to talk to Mariah Carey and Serena Williams and Taylor Swift, who gave her the middle finger and didn't even respond directly, but had a rep.
What?
Send her back it's a no letter to her. And I guarantee you, Paul, they had the same problem in gearing up for season 2. No one wanted to be with her. She didn't have the cachet she had when she first left the royal family, claiming racism and mental health problems. Now she just had to make it on her own. And their reputations have been so damaged here. All they got was, I'll pass.
God, please, no!
Yeah, there's a million other podcasts they can do if they want to tell stories about how terrible their childhood was. There's plenty of other opportunities. But I like what was said by the United Talent Agency CEO. He's in trouble for saying this, but he says, turns out Meghan Markle was not a great audio talent or necessarily any kind of talent.
Come on now, dog.
And, just because you're famous doesn't make you great at something. Why is he in trouble for saying the truth?
Because they don't. Hollywood's not based on truth, ever, any piece of it. So God bless the man for saying what we all know is true. But, it really speaks to sort of the juxtaposition between the positioning of this podcast and what the reality was. Her fake saccharine voice. Go back and look at the clip where Mariah Carey says to her, "You're a diva too." She was saying to Mariah, "You're a diva." Mariah said, "You're a diva." And, what's my idol?
Is he all right upstairs?
Calling me out. Just the over-the-top dramatic. She was pathetic. She wasn't good at it. He was right. And so what did we see in the press? She got an award for top podcast by some group I never heard of. That's how Hollywood, the agents and the people around her, manipulate us, trying to make us believe this thing is a success. It's special. She's nailing it. And yet they weren't getting the downloads anytime after the first couple when people were tuning in because of curiosity. And they didn't get renewed because if there really was something special and award-winning about this thing, Spotify would have sucked up her laziness and put the team around her to make it successful. They didn't have the appetite because it was a loser and they knew it.
I am the one, the way your son don't need.
Joe Biden, of course, is a historic president because he's the only person who can fall upstairs. But he's also continuously lying about any knowledge to do with his son, and that's getting worse by the day. Whistleblowers who are genuinely brave, not the ones who just anonymously kept dropping against Trump, most of which was garbage. And then he was out there saying, God save the Queen. Another wonderful fortnight for the free world.
God save the Queen, man.
What do you mean by that?
I don't have anything for you on that. I have no clue what was going on there. Why did he say that? Why does he say enjoy your senior year? Why does he say things like this? They come out of nowhere. And I do think, I used to go visit my Nana. My Nana lived on her own till she was 100. And when she turned 101, she had to go into the home, right, where she could get better medical care.
Nice.
And I heard things like that from some of her, colleagues in the senior citizens home.
Fellow inmates.
Right. I'm just saying that's the only time I've heard such nonsense get blurted out with absolutely no connection to what's happening in the room. Of course, the problem is he's the leader of the free world.
Are you sure about that?
Well, of course, the stress of the presidency, right? So we saw Barack Obama, fit bloke, go from sort of dark hair to grey hair in the space of his 8 years. This bloke starts as a corpse. What is the expectation of him at the end of 4, let alone 8?
I've got 2 words for you.
Okay.
Kamala Harris. That's what truly strikes fear in the hearts of most Americans. And they need to get real honest with themselves about the fact that that's the reality if this guy gets reelected. It may not be death. I'm not wishing this man an untimely death.
Of course not.
But he is pushing 86 by the end of that second term.
Fact.
And we already see the mental deterioration. So he could be, pushed right out of office thanks to his cabinet members if he becomes incapacitated any further mentally. More than likely, if he gets reelected, they won't do that. We've seen what they've done with John Fetterman, this senator in the state of Pennsylvania who can't put 2 sentences together either. They just keep pushing him into the voting box so he can vote the way they want.
Well, duh.
So maybe they'll do that with Joe Biden. I don't know. But at this point, it does look a little like elder abuse to make this guy run again. He won't have a debate, even though 80% of Democrats want him to debate his Democratic challengers. He won't do it. And I really think their whole plan is working right now, Paul, which is get Trump to be the nominee on the GOP side. That'll motivate the voters, and Biden won't really have to run or put himself out there and put words together.
Yeah, right.
100%. California, always at the front of stupid things, and they've decided now to pass a new law that's particularly insane against parents who want to take care of their kids.
This can't be allowed. This has to stop.
Why? Why?
It passed the House in the California State House, and now it's going to go to the Senate. And it would have to be signed by the governor, who has presidential aspirations. And if this guy signs this, he's done. This isn't like, oh, trans people should get care, right? They call it gender affirming care. This is the California lawmakers saying, if you don't affirm, quote, affirm your child's gender confusion, and they don't define what that means. It could mean you refuse to get his penis chopped off when he says, I'm a girl.
That doesn't make sense.
You could be labeled a child abuser. You could be treated as a criminal, the same as a sexual abuser of children. And anyone who has a duty to report, like a third-party source, like a school or an advocacy organization, would be able to report you to the authorities as a child abuser.
Boy.
So the original bill was, let's just have whether they're affirming and offering gender affirming care as a factor, a custody battle judge might be able to consider. But then this guy, Scott Wiener, who I believe has no children, added an amendment saying, let's take it one step further where we could label them child abusers. We'll change the whole definition of abuse. And it got passed. These lawmakers actually passed it in the House in the state of California.